Who has the best chin in the UFC? Who has the worst? Today we're going to make a tier list ranking some of the best and worst chins in the UFC. Stick around. I'm Wyatt, and this is Fight Society. Okay, so today we're making a tier list, a UFC chin tier list. From those whose chins are made of granite, vibranium stone, and those who do a chicken dance from a gust of wind, as Connor would say. We are going to start with the best chins in the UFC. First off, we have the absolute most unbreakable chin in UFC history to this point, in my opinion, and that is Marvin Vettori, okay? Marvin Vettori has taken head kicks over and over from the likes of Paulo Costa, Israel Adesanya, and had other fights such as the Jared Cannonier fight where he got over 200 significant strikes put on him. He has yet to be KO'd, and Marvin Vettori arguably has the best chin in UFC history. I even saw a comment on Reddit that said the cheat code is that he's never fully conscious. So you can't go be unconscious if you're never fully conscious. We move on from there to somebody that has never been dropped in a fight. He's been stung before, but never been wobbled. He's been cracked by the likes of Dominick Reyes. He's eaten some very big shots, but he has never been knocked down. He has never been KO'd. And that is some people's GOAT, not mine, but some people's GOAT, Jon Jones. He has fought a murderer's row at 205 pounds, and now he is the UFC heavyweight champion. I would have liked to see how his chin would have held up in a fight against Francis Ngannou, but I guess we're never going to get to find that one out. And really, Jon Jones has been cracked quite a few times, like the uppercut from Dominick Reyes, but I guess the only thing that can drop Jon Jones is Nike after he hits a pregnant lady and runs. We move on from there to another zombie like Marvin Vettori, someone who has lost a fair amount of fights, taken a fair amount of damage, but we have yet to see their chin get cracked. And that is Marlon Chito Vera. Basically has a fight approach that is take damage until your opponent gets tired and then knock them out. This happened with the Rob Font fight. This happened with the Dom Cruz fight. He loses until the fourth round and then gets a late stoppage. I mean, we all saw the knee that he got hit with by Sean O'Malley. Sounded like a baseball bat breaking on an inside pitch, and he was fine. It allegedly fractured his skull, and he was all right. And he's coming back and fighting at UFC Abu Dhabi, which is in August. So he's fighting about 5 months after potentially fracturing his skull. So Chito Vera, S tier. We move on from there to Khabib, one of the best chins of all time. Never dropped, never even bled in a fight. Basically went his entire career without any sign of damage showing. And I want to know what you guys think, because some people are comparing Islam and Khabib right now, given that they are tied in lightweight title defenses. But we've seen Islam roughed up a few times. The Poirier fight, the first Volkanovski fight. But we never even saw a bruise on Khabib, let alone a cut, a knockdown, a KO. And he had taken some big shots from people like Conor, Dustin Poirier, Justin Gaethje, an uncrackable chin, someone that never even bled in pro combat, which is pretty crazy. We move on from there. Some of you guys might think this is a little bit random. Former women's flyweight champion Valentina Shevchenko has 0 KO losses in her career, and her only TKO loss was an up kick where she got cut by Liz Carmouche. I actually had to dig a little bit to find some info about that one at some random regional promotion before she got to the UFC. We move on from there. This is somebody who has not been in the UFC for a while, but an entire 11-year pro MMA career at heavyweight and pro kickboxing career, but they only suffered 2 knockout losses, which this is not like Chito Vera never getting KO'd at 135 or Khabib never being dropped at 155. This is somebody that spent 11 years heavyweight as a professional MMA fighter, and we know heavyweight MMA, it's 260-pound guys with small gloves. Usually when they start swinging, someone goes down. And so somebody that went 11 years and only got KO'd, TKO'd twice as a 11-year pro heavyweight, Mark Hunt. You know, you guys might remember him from his fight with Brock Lesnar back in the day that led to a huge lawsuit against the UFC, which he ultimately lost. And I believe he owes the UFC legal fees for that. So Mark Hunt, 11 years as a pro heavyweight and only TKO'd twice. So this is my S tier UFC chins. And we move on from there to the worst chins. We're going to go from the S tier to the D tier, and then we'll fill it in the middle. But we're going to go to the absolute worst chins in UFC history. We have someone that finally actually just took a hard punch from a light heavyweight this weekend and actually ate it well for the first time in years. And that is Dominick Reyes, who just got a win over Dustin Jacoby at UFC Louisville. And this was surprising because we've seen him get nothing but chinned by Jan Blachowicz, by Jiri Prochazka. He got knocked out by Ryan Spann to a jab. So hopefully Dominick Reyes is headed in the right direction with his career, not going down another string of KO losses, but still KO'd by a Ryan Spann jab. One of the chinniest fighters in UFC history. And that is not just, keep in mind, he's not even the chinniest light heavyweight of all time. So that just shows you where at 205, where the speed, where you're not quite a heavyweight, combined with the power of being much bigger than like a 45er or a 35er really comes into play. Where, because some of these guys can get KO'd by a shot on the forehead that doesn't even land clean. Somebody like this next D tier chin, Johnny Walker, one of the chinniest fighters in UFC history, one of the most exciting fighters in UFC light heavyweight history, jumping knees, spinning kicks, something that you don't see a lot out of light heavyweights, but he also is on everybody's highlight reel. Jamal Hill, Magomed Ankalaev. I wanted to see him beat Magomed Ankalaev just for scientific reasons, just for scientific purposes. I wanted to see Alex Pereira's left hook on Johnny Walker's chin, but it looks like we're not going to be able to see that. We move on from there to someone who is extremely, extremely chinny. Former champ, started his career 11-0 and has had a bit of a slide, you could say. That is Cody No Love Garbrandt, who went from 11-0 to I think 13-6 now. So the fall off has been quite heavy. KO'd by Kai Kara France at flyweight. KO'd by TJ Dillashaw. The list goes on. He's been stung badly, KO'd badly by a lot of high-level fighters. And the reason that I have him as a D tier is this is because he's fighting at 35. He's fighting at 125 pounds. He's a flyweight and a bantamweight. And he's gotten chinned like Johnny Walker has at 205, or like some heavyweights do. So that is our D tier for UFC chins, is Dominick Reyes, Cody No Love Garbrandt, and Johnny Walker. We're gonna go up from there. We are gonna move on to the C tier. We have Luke Rockhold, who actually his chin held up pretty well in the pocket against Paulo Costa in his last UFC fight, which is a little concerning, and that's why I say Paulo Costa has overrated power. Luke Rockhold also has terrible boxing defense, which put him in some really bad spots, such as the Bisping knockout, such as the Jan Blachowicz knockout at 205. He's not somebody that should have gone up to light heavyweight. Luke Rockhold's chin is C tier. His last name might have the word rock in it, but he does not have a rock-solid chin. We move on from there to Alistair Overeem, and they need to study his brain when he passes away, because he is somebody who had 66 pro MMA fights, 15 KO, TKO losses, and a pro kickboxing career before and after the UFC. I'm telling you, nobody has had their brain rattled more than Alistair Overeem, and he fights at heavyweight, which is why I gave him a little bit of grace and put him in the C tier, not the D tier, because I do think that weight class does play fairly heavily into how susceptible you are to KOs, because heavyweights hit a lot harder than 25ers. We move on from there to former UFC heavyweight champion Andrei Arlovski, who has 12 TKO KO losses in his pro MMA career. You know, you also have to take into account hard sparring in the gym, wars that he got into that he also won. So Andrei Arlovski, C tier chin, same thing as Overeem. I give him a little bit of grace because he fought at heavyweight. which is why also I put Mark Hunt so high, is because he fought at heavyweight and was only KO'd twice in his entire career. 11 years, 2 KOs at heavyweight. We move on from there to the B tier. I'll start off with former featherweight champion Alex Volkanovski, who did have a chin of steel. Only career loss was at welterweight earlier in his career, obviously being a featherweight, just being too big for the weight class while he was kind of on his journey down, because I think he started his pro career at 185. Up until the Islam Makhachev decision loss, his only loss was at welterweight. And then he follows that up with another loss after beating Yair Rodriguez, took the Islam Makhachev rematch on 11 days notice, where he was viciously KO'd with a first round head kick, and then followed up with being absolutely knocked out cold, losing his featherweight belt to Ilia Topuria, which is why I have him as a B tier. If you would have asked me right before the last Islam fight, if you would have asked me like October 15th of last year, I'd have Volk as an S tier chin, not being dropped by any featherweights, and now back-to-back KO losses to the point where I don't want to see him fight for like a year. Give your brain some rest, dude. We move on from there. Somebody that inflicted a KO loss on Volkanovski is Islam Makhachev. Now, he has eaten some big shots. He did just have a war with Dustin Poirier, but he has been flatlined KO'd by an absolute bum in Adriano Martins, or some people think it's Alexandre Pantoja. Adriano Martins, who went years without winning a fight after KOing Islam Makhachev. Given the fact that he's been KO'd stiff, I have Islam Makhachev as a B tier chin. Moving on from there, B tier chin, Michael Bisping, a former middleweight champ. See, there's a lot of champs right here, a lot of former champs and champs in this B tier right here. And which actually shows you that you don't necessarily need to have the best chin in the world to become a champ, because if you look at the S tier, you have Mark Hunt, Chito Vera, and Marvin Vettori, all who never became UFC champs. So, Michael Bisping, the Dan Henderson KO, brutal, and then also ending his career being absolutely flatlined, head spun around in China, I think it was, by Kelvin Gastelum on short notice. Somebody that's had their fair share of knockouts. Actually interesting that he was at 205 at one point in his career. And someone else that is also a former champion in one division and a current champion in another division is my favorite fighter currently, Alex Poatan Pereira. Now, Alex has eaten some big shots from some hard hitters. He has eaten some shots from Jiri Prochazka, but he did get absolutely knocked out cold by Israel Adesanya, who doesn't have no power, but he doesn't have incredible knockout power with his hands. He just doesn't. He's KO'd people like Paulo Costa, or TKO'd people. Alex Pereira, B tier chin. Now, this could change over time. I think that part of him being knocked out at 185 was the fact that he had such a massive weight cut, which left his brain vulnerable to, or susceptible to KOs. But nonetheless, he is a light heavyweight now that it got flatline KO'd by a 185er when he was down there. We move on to our A tier, and we will start off with Nick Diaz, who technically has three losses in his career by KO, TKO. But if you look into it, really he has one. He has a TKO by punches back in Elite XC, I think it was. Was it Elite XC back in the day? 2002 UA4 to Jeremy Jackson. He was TKO'd 49 seconds into the fight. And that was 22 years ago. But aside from that, his only two TKO/KO losses are a doctor's stoppage in Elite XC to KJ Noons. And then his most recent fight at UFC 266 against Robbie Lawler, where he wasn't TKO'd. It was more of a retirement or a forfeit type of TKO because he just quit in the fight. He got ate up a little bit with body shots, and he kind of just said to Jason Herzog, like, no, I'm done. From a chin standpoint, though, he has a doctor stoppage loss. He has a kind of like a bitched out quit type of loss. And then 22 years ago, he got TKO'd in 49 seconds. We move on. Next is his brother, Nate Diaz, who his only TKO KO loss was when he got head kicked by Josh Thompson, if I'm not mistaken. And aside from that, he doesn't have any KO TKO losses, but the reason he's not an S tier chin is that he was dropped. He got chewed up by Jorge Masvidal when they fought for the first BMF belt, and Conor dropped him. He's been dropped before. He's a tough guy, very tough fighter, but he's not necessarily like a granite chin where it's unbreakable. We move on from there. We have former featherweight champion, former 155 title challenger, and current BMF champion, Max Holloway. Now look, I know a lot of you guys are going to say, no, Max Holloway, legendary chin, never been dropped, blah, 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 blah. He should be S tier, but here's why I'm telling you why not. He got dropped by Justin Gaethje at UFC 300. That's true. And he did get dropped by Dustin Poirier in their rematch for the interim 155 belt. It was just that the cage was in his way, so he didn't fall all the way down for it to get scored as a knockdown. But if there's no cage there, that's a knockdown. So he has been knocked down before. And that's why I have him as an A-tier chin, not an S-tier chin, even though it is a legendary chin. We move on from there to Israel Adesanya. Izzy has one KO TKO loss in his entire career, and it was a standing TKO. He didn't even actually get dropped. He got dropped by Sean Strickland, which is not a good look, but he did survive that and ended up losing a very embarrassing decision. And aside from that, there's nothing really to get on his chin for. There's nothing really to discount his chin. He's fought the likes of Paulo Costa, Yoel Romero. He's fought some very hard hitters. He moved up to 205 and fought Jan Blachowicz, who hits very hard, and he lost a decision, and he lost on the feet as well, but he did eat some big shots. So Israel Adesanya is an A-tier chin. If he wouldn't have been dropped by Pillowhand Strickland, I probably would have him as an S-tier chin, but still very impressive chin for the former middleweight champ. We move on from there to our final entry today, which is Jiri Prochazka. Now, he eats big shots. Same thing as like a Chito Vera. Jiri, blocks punches with his face. That's kind of his defensive strategy at times. You saw at UFC 300 against Alexander Rakic, he got elbowed and you saw him like drop and reboot in the middle of a fight. The reason I don't have him as an A tier or as an S tier chin is because we saw him get elbowed into unconsciousness by Alex Pereira at Madison Square Garden for the vacant 205 belt. And then he actually, if you look back at it, he got KO'd in Ryzen as well before he got to the UFC. So here is my UFC chin tier list, some of the best chins, some of the worst chins, and some in between. Let me know your thoughts down below. Who do you think is the best chin in UFC history? And who do you think is the worst chin in UFC history? You guys let me know your thoughts down below. Thanks for watching this video. Make sure to like and subscribe. If you want access to extra content aside from my regular videos, click the link in the description down below to become a channel member and get access to members-only live streams and other bonus perks. Or click the join button on our channel homepage. And if you're interested in some non-MMA content from me, check out my weekly podcast, the Hissyfit podcast, and check out my personal channel, Wyatt's World. I'll have them both linked in the description down below. Go watch this suggested video, and I'll see you next time.